Yo, what's going on YouTube, and welcome back to another Destiny Taken King video. And in this video, I want to bring you guys a quick guide on how to complete this week's Nightfall. And if you guys do find this even the slightest bit helpful, or you just enjoy the video, then a like would be massively appreciated. And obviously don't forget to subscribe if you're not already. Stay tuned for all the Taken King stuff we got coming. Anyway, on to this week's Nightfall. It's one of the brand new Taken King strikes, set on the Dreadnought, and this is the one where you fight Darkblade. Now to begin with, the recommended light for the Nightfall is 280. So one of the initial challenges that a lot of you are going to meet is that you're simply going to be underleveled. The fight team that I did it with, I was 269 light, 269 was 277, and Carucifer was also 277. So all of us were a little bit underleveled, and as you can see, it lists the Nightfall as very hard. However, we still did it. It's doable, you just need to be patient, take your time, and you should be alright. One of the fortunate things is that there's actually no burn this time round, so you don't have to worry about sort of, void damage or solar damage, because that could get a little bit hectic. But the modifiers this time round are small arms, where primary weapon damage is favoured. You also have juggler, so no ammo drops for your equipped weapon. You have grounded, where players take more damage when they're in the air. And you also have ironclad, where more enemies have shields, and that's where things get a little bit tricky. And before we actually dive into the strike itself and start talking about the different rooms, one thing you want to note is that you're definitely going to want to have your elemental bases covered. Enemies in this strike will show up with all 3 shields. However, if you had to pick one, void damage is probably the most predominant one. You'll find a lot of enemies with void shields, so if you have any void weapons, then that is going to be your best ally. I ran this with a void sniper and also a void machine gun, but unfortunately at the time, my primary weapon was simply kinetic. And then secondary to void would be solar, so if you've only got a couple of those, then grab void and solar, and then you should have most of your bases covered. Now for the strike itself, I'm going to break this down into 5 different sections. I'm not going to show you the entire playthrough, because our first run did take us probably about 45, maybe 50 minutes, because we were sort of taking our time. But what I want to do is kind of like pick out the different rooms and go over a couple of different tactics that will help keep you alive. So first of all, this room here, this is the very first room you're going to encounter. You'll start on the Dreadnought, you'll run through these corridors, and you'll basically end up underground here. Now this room itself isn't actually too bad. There's quite a lot out the doorway, but if you actually fight from the doorway, you'll actually find it's not too difficult. What you want to do is clear that main courtyard, and then you want to work up either to the left or to the right. We chose the left hand side. You basically want to sort of like use your aerial advantage, use the fact that you're raised up above the enemy to try and take down the enemies in the second courtyard. There's this dividing wall between, so you're able to kind of deal with the first pack of enemies before you then have to go and take on the second. But then when you do get to the second, do bear in mind there are quite a few heavily shielded enemies there. So again, you're going to want to make sure where possible that you're using your elemental weapons to try and sort of take them down as fast as possible, and then switch to your primary weapon to take advantage of that small arms modifier. Generally speaking, the rule for any Nightfall, especially if you're underleveled, is that you want to take your time. There is no point rushing this, because if you rush it, you will get yourself in some sticky situations and you probably will die. Now once you've overcome that first room, you'll end up here. Now this room here is a little bit tricky. Basically what you have to do is go to the left and to the right and deactivate those kind of magical totems to then allow you to move on to the next stage of the fight. So before you do any of that, you want to clear out the enemies right in front of you. Again, use your elevated position to your advantage, take out all the enemies in the courtyard first, and also try and snipe on the wizards on the left and the right, because when you jump over there, there's 2 to 3 wizards, and they're not something you want to deal with up close. If you can pick them off from the top of the stairs, it's going to make your life a hell of a lot easier. Obviously, once you do finally move over there and you do start kind of deactivating those totems, more enemies will spawn, especially back in the central corridor, especially back in the central chamber. But again, if you take your time and you take advantage of the fact that you're also on these kind of faraway pillars, once again you can pick the enemies off from range. Pretty much the long and short of this is you don't really want to be fighting any of these things up close, especially if you're not high enough level, because they are going to deal some nasty damage, and a lot of these obviously do have close range melee attacks. Now once you've cleared out this room, the door at the back will open, and this is where things get a little bit hectic. Typically, if you've done this strike already on its kind of level 36 variant, you're probably used to running in this room and dealing with the enemies that way. However, what I would honestly recommend when doing this on the Nightfall is actually standing back at this door. You can have someone run in to sort of like activate the actual room itself, but if you back out, this door does not close. That then means from the gap in the doorway, you can snipe a lot of the enemies and stay at a relatively safe range. However, do bear in mind you're not completely safe here. The Taken captains that throw the fire do still throw it at the doorway, and if you're not careful they'll throw it behind you and you will still get killed. So this is by no means a safe spot, this is by no means a cheese spot, but it just does put you a little bit further away, and it also means that you have the advantage of knowing that there will be no enemies spawning behind you. Provided you keep that fire in check, there'll be nothing behind you that can potentially kill you, so you just need to slowly pick off everything in front. Once you've dealt with the main waves, the doors at the back will open, and you actually get more enemies that will flood in. However, you don't actually need to fight these. If you can, especially if you've got like a Night Stalker with Vanishing Smoke, you can turn your whole team invisible, run through to the other side, and you can completely skip everything else in this room. After that, you're then going to end up in this room, which is the final one before you actually get to Darkblade. Now this one is also a bit of a pain. There's a lot of pillars, a lot of places for enemies to hide behind, and there are also a lot of Shriekers. And they are going to be your first port of call. Again, using your elevated position, From the top of the stairs, you want to start picking off the Shriekers one by one. The one on the left is the first one you'll be able to hit as soon as you walk in the room, because it'll be open, so you can take that out, run back into the door, so that the actual kind of like trailing purple void plasma balls don't actually chase and kind of destroy you, because they will take you out if they do hit you. Once you've then avoided the first one, you want to gradually start working your way in, moving forward, taking out the Shrieker, and then backing up again. The further you get into the room, and the further away the Shriekers are, you generally get to a point where you don't have to run all the way back up the stairs and into the door to avoid it. You'll find that kind of the top of the stairs is generally your safe point. As you can see here, when I very confidently pull off this dance move, knowing that they won't hit me in my back. Once all the Shriekers are down, you then need to kind of work through gradually picking off the enemies, and do note again that once the door at the back opens, more enemies will come through, and you're definitely going to want to take them out. Technically speaking, you probably could run past them if you could stealth through, but there was so much going on, and it is a bit of a bottleneck up there that it's probably actually not worth it, especially given that you spent all your time getting this far. It is also worth mentioning that Nightfalls do no longer return you to orbit, so if you do die at any point, you'll only have to go back to the previous checkpoint. You won't actually have to start the whole thing all over again, so it's not actually quite so punishing. But regardless, given that some of these rooms do take a little while to kind of wipe out all the enemies, you still don't really want to die. After this room, you then make your way to Darkblade, and this is the final fight. Now, if you haven't done this strike at all, then the fight is basically done in darkness. Darkblade will spawn in front of you, and he'll then walk towards you, and he's basically got a massive axe, which, in the Nightfall, will kill you in one. So, with that being said, the best thing to do is try and kite him where possible. You want to make sure that your team are spread out at all times, because Darkblade can spawn on top of you, and if he does that, and he hits down, then he'll get all of you, and you'll all wipe together. So where possible, try and kind of adopt this sort of triangle formation, and just simply run around the room in circles. Jumping is definitely your best friend, because if you look at the radar, you'll see when Darkblade is about to spawn in, and if you see that he's about to spawn in at your location, jump before anything. Jumping is far better than running, because if you jump up in the air, generally speaking, if he slams down straight away, you will just about survive. If you run, however, he'll probably catch the back of you, and that'll definitely take you out. In between the waves, you want to make sure that you prioritise the adds, so when the Thrall and the Curse Thrall arrive, ignore Darkblade completely, make sure obviously you're not walking into him, but make sure you take out those adds. Again, obviously once that's done, you then want to kind of keep attacking him, but the thing you do want to bear in mind is that when his helmet gets knocked off, when he reveals his sort of ugly ogre face, he's going to be a hell of a lot faster. He'll run at you with his axe, and again, if you're not jumping, or you're kind of caught floating, especially Warlocks out there, you do want to be careful. Your float jump, he will still catch you in the air, so you want to be really careful when using this, because this is typically where the fight will go downhill. The best thing to do with this, if you've got a Night Stalker, have him save his super until this moment, because if you can actually tether him while he's in rage mode, while he's kind of charging towards you, you can actually slow him down, and it makes him a little bit more manageable while you actually burn him down. Another tip I'll give you as well is I'd actually suggest holding onto your heavy ammo until this point, because you can quite happily use your primary weapon and your secondary weapons to down his health until the point where his helmet comes off, and what you then want to do is basically deal as much damage as possible when he's in this final stage, so you don't have to deal with him for too long. So given that you do have Juggler, it's probably worth saving that until then. But aside from that, if you do all this together, you keep moving, you keep going in circles, and you try and spread out, you'll find that you should be alright. As strikes go, this isn't actually too hard. You just need to be really patient, kind of space yourself out a bit, and watch out for the obvious damage. Once you're done, you'll get some legendary marks, you'll obviously get the usual kind of rewards, and obviously jump to the final screen to see what you got. I actually got a Celestial Nighthawk, which is kind of cool. I mean, I'm a Night Stalker, so I'm not actually going to use it, but hey, it's 290 defense right now, so it's bumping up my light, so I'm going to use it irrespective of the perks. Anyway, that, my friends, is it for this guide. Hopefully you guys find it helpful, especially if you get stuck on the Nightfall. If you guys do have any questions, then let me know in the comments down below. But aside from that, thank you very much for watching. Take it easy, catch you next time, peace out.